Opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not WSTU. WSTU does not endorse any products mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU.
The Treasure Coast longest-running local talk radio show is on the air. The Treasure Coast Forum. Get interested, get educated, get involved, and give us a call with your opinions at 220-9788. And here's your host of the Treasure Coast Forum.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to WSTU 1450. I'm Amira Meehan, and I'm here with Mr. Frank Metzapelli.
Yes, you are. Yes, and we welcome all our listeners. We thank you for joining us. I've been told by other listeners that this is probably one of the most listened to shows on the station and largely owned to you. So I thank you for that. So
I have a fan following?
You do.
No way.
You do indeed. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, you got to keep up the good work. So you said you were prepared to talk about a couple of topics today.
Oh, a few things.
Yes.
So first, we're going to start kind of bleak with news updates.
Okay.
Israel has done another airstrike on the Gaza. Hundreds of innocent people have died. I saw my first video, like full-on video, and they blurred out bodies, but the fact that there were bodies freaking me out.
Right.
There was one guy yelling for a hospital, holding a little girl. That's when I stopped watching.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that happened, painting a little bit of a picture.
Interesting side note, the show just before ours from Fox, there was a audio clip of a, I imagine the same airstrike that you're speaking of. There was a mom who was mourning the loss of her son, and she's clutching his, remains. And a reporter, I guess, was there and asked, what happened. She says it's the Hamas dogs are responsible for this. Yeah. And there was a Hamas person in the shot, the video, and he clasped his hand over her mouth so she couldn't talk anymore. So the thing is, when you get news, you have to
100%.
Yes.
The Hamas. So around the Gaza, Palestinians want to get out. Okay.
Yes.
There's Hamas there.
Right.
They're at the borders with dogs, with tanks. They're stopping their own people from getting out.
Right.
And they're set. I'm pretty sure this is a trap. This is a trap for Israel. So Israel's fallen for that trap by doing that airstrike. So Israel, they claim that all their actions are justified because they want to get rid of the Hamas for doing horrible things to them in the first place.
Right.
For starting the whole thing. So they go, and then everyone else is just all the innocent lives that are lost are just collateral. This is exactly what the Hamas want. Now, again, Israel, they did identify the bodies of the Hamas people that they sought to kill in the first place anyway.
Right.
And then, of course, when the Hamas see the bodies, they're like, oh, we've never seen that guy before in our lives. Who is that? And so you could tell that they're staging. They want Hamas people to be there. They want Israel. They want Palestinians to be there. They want Palestinians to die at Israel's hand. So then they make Israel become a monster just like them.
Right.
And so it garners more support. And it's working. There are more people in my school are supporting the Hamas. More people all around the country are supporting the Hamas.
And are you reminding them that they're supporting a terrorist organization?
Yeah, they are. But I'm not saying that Israel's completely, innocent. Not completely, because they are killing innocent Palestinians. But then again, that is war.
It is war.
But they shouldn't have fallen for something like that.
They, prior to them moving in on Gaza, they before the airstrikes, they dropped lots of leaflets.
Yeah.
Let everybody know.
But the Hamas just won't let the Palestinians go. And Israel, I think they should figure this out. If I'm 16 and I can figure this out after reading 2 articles, if I'm in a war room 24/7 in Israel, I should figure this out too and not start bombing innocent people for no reason and find another way to destroy the Hamas.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess they don't know any other way. So
maybe they just don't want to know. Maybe they just want to get rid of it as soon as possible.
Well, the problem is these situations are fluid. So the bad guys aren't static. They're moving.
Yeah.
So when they get intelligence that tells them where certain key people are that are leaders of this terrorist group, they want to cut off the head of the snake, basically.
Why couldn't they deploy a spy, and the spy could just quietly just kill him?
Right. Well,
That's what I would have done.
yeah.
Use the CIA. We have the CIA.
Yeah.
They just use the CIA for people who just sit in their desks, get coffee, and tell people who
Yeah.
to kill, instead of actually using CIA agents field agents to actually do stuff.
Yeah. Stuff.
Like it feels more like a secret IT than
Yeah.
the CIA.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got a Fox News clip here that I pulled up just before we went to air, and I don't know if it'll. Maybe it'll. Maybe not. See if it comes up, great. In the White House, they had one of the Fox reporters talk to the representatives for the White House and about what's going on. And so here, I'll play that clip if it'll come up. Oh, naturally. So it's a
Advertisement.
yeah,
What's it for?
skincare.
Shout out to skincare.
Talking about getting Americans out of Gaza, President Biden said, I want to thank our partners in the region and particularly Qatar. The leader of Hamas lives in Qatar. So why is President Biden thanking them for anything?
Oh, geez, Peter. Let's take a step back here. Look at this.
Gee,
Qatar was.
They are a terrorist group that killed Americans and kidnapped Americans within the last month.
Peter, Qatar has been helpful in getting those Americans out. I'm sure you would agree with me, and everybody at your network would agree, that getting American hostages out is a good thing. And Qatar was a key player in that regard. Qatar has lines of communication with Hamas that almost nobody else has. Now, I'm not saying that we support Hamas. Of course we don't. They're a terrorist organization. And Israel has an absolute right to go after them. But Qatar has lines of communication that not everybody else has. And it would be irresponsible. In fact, I would expect that you and everybody else in here would be going after me if we weren't doing everything we could and having every possible conversation we can have to get Americans that are held hostage back home with their families. If we weren't doing that, it would be diplomatic malpractice. Let me read something to you, if you don't mind. I think I want to put this into some context here. Let me tell you what we're dealing with Hamas. Oh, geez, this is your notebook, Kareem. Sorry. This fellow at Hamas, a guy named Ghazni Hamad, he did an interview a couple of days ago. He said, Israel's a country that has no place on our land. We must remove it because it constitutes a security, military, and political catastrophe to the Arab and Islamic nation and must be finished. We are not ashamed to say this with full force. We must teach Israel a lesson, and we will do this again and again. That's what the Israeli people are up against. And that's the group that are holding innocent Americans as well as 200. And you're going to say, well, then why are you talking to them? And why are you? No, I'm not.
If Qatar is
No,
so
I'm
helpful,
not.
why aren't we asking them to hand over the leader of this terrorist
We are
group?
working with Qatar to get our people out and to help get aid in. That's a priority right now. And obviously, we're also helping Israel go after Hamas.
And as you push the Israelis for humanitarian pauses, are they just supposed to sit back and let Hamas attack them and attack them and attack them and not fight back?
We have been crystal clear that Israel has the right to defend themselves. I mean, my
So
goodness.
pause means they can
All right.
still
So we have our caller on our line. Go ahead.
Hello, Frank.
Hey.
Hello,
Hey.
future president, young lady.
Hi.
So, hi. So I understand the leadership's hanging out and hiding in Qatar, and they're also hiding over there in Iran. And while
Right.
Israel is the little Satan, we're the big Satan.
Correct.
And yeah. So my whole thing is that, and he says we're there to help right now. We have people, special ops on the ground looking for the hostages.
Yes.
So we're not actively there shooting. I'm sure we'd shoot somebody if they got in our way.
Right.
But I would flood the tunnels. I would just flood the tunnels.
Yeah.
That's what I would do because that's where they're hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too. Another piece in the news that I listened to prior to airtime. There's a shortage of fuel and other provisions in the Gaza Strip,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of fuel that Hamas has in their tunnels to keep their tunnels the I guess the air conditioning system,
Why don't we just blow up the
electrical.
tunnels instead of
Well,
putting an airstrike?
Well, that's what the airstrikes are for, to blow up the tunnels.
Oh, so
Yeah.
the tunnels
Well,
are
if
right
you
under
flood the
Gaza?
tunnels,
Yes.
if you flood the tunnels, maybe we'll
Oh.
have the oil too. You
Yeah,
know?
but it's a possibility. So yeah.
You know, because they need to breathe.
Mhm.
And if you flood the tunnels, the rats will be coming out or they'll drown in the tunnels.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel horrible, but they've been dropping leaflets and the Hamas won't let any of the regular people go.
Correct.
So they're trapped.
Correct.
And I don't know.
But
It's
I
a
mean,
horrible thing.
Yeah.
War is hell. It's not a fun thing.
No, it never
Well, my
is.
dogs are playing. They're going
Okay.
to start barking in
Oh,
a
okay.
second.
All right. Well, I'll let
So
you
I'll
go.
get off there and listen and learn.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. Take
All
care.
right.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye. So instead of blowing up the tunnels from doing an airstrike from above, why don't they just send something from within and just blow it up underground?
Well,
I mean, would that just
it's very
would still-
difficult. It's easier to.
But I mean, less
easier
people
to-
would die.
Well, but that's why they do it the way they deliberately they put their offices in hospitals, in their places of worship,
Mm-hmm.
and they deliberately do it in populous areas. They use the people as human shields, and because they have no regard
Yeah.
for their lives.
Yeah.
And the people there know it. The lady that briefly referred to the Hamas people as dogs, she understood
Mm-hmm.
that Israel was not responsible for her son's death.
Mm-hmm.
She got that. It was
Mhm.
the people that are forcing her to live under, just dreadful conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just one of millions of people that live there, the Gaza Strip. Israel was perfectly happy being their neighbor as long as they left them alone.
Mhm.
So it's a mess, no doubt about that. So what was subject number 2? We've got 10 minutes before our break.
Well, there's a House bill for aid.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the House is kind of in like a civil war. So the Congress is in a civil war. So the House, they proposed that $4.3 billion should go for aid for Israel. But the Senate was like, nah, we'll only pass this bill or we'll only support this proposal if we also put in more money for Ukraine and to secure Ukraine borders. And then the House doesn't agree with that because they'll lose probably, I think, 30 billion in revenue within the next 10 years. Like there'll be like deficit spending would have to be too many cuts, and we can't even control our own borders.
Right.
And so now you can't really expect the government to send aid to secure borders in a foreign country if we can't even secure our own. So there's a whole debate in the House, in Congress right now. How much aid they should give and who they should give it to.
Right. Right. So what are you thinking on that?
I'm thinking, I mean, haven't we already given Ukraine aid?
We have.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. But right now, the immediate obligation, like the immediate threat, is the Gaza. So I think I agree with the House. I agree with the Republicans on this one, that we should just give aid to Israel.
So here's the devil's in the details, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of stop supporting the folks in Ukraine.
Not
Okay.
like completely stop. It's just they want additional aid, don't we be giving them aid?
Well, we give them a monthly stipend, let's say.
Yeah, this doesn't affect the monthly stipend. This is just a whole nother bill for more stipends.
Oh, addition to the
Addition. It doesn't mention anything about cutting the stipend that we already give Ukraine.
well, so the problem is we're in for several,
Mm-hmm.
$billion that in aid that we've already
Yeah.
given to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And Ukraine is, what they're saying is, if it's a war of attrition, Ukraine is going to lose to Russia because Russia just has more people
Yeah.
to draw on,
Mm-hmm.
and they have what they call these meat waves, and what they're doing, because they're running out of equipment,
Mm-hmm.
so they're just throwing people at the Ukrainian troops, and the stories are horrific.
Oh, it's kind of like what the Mongols did when they like sieged
Right.
places. They just throw people the bubonic plague on other people, and somehow the Mongols never got the plague.
Well, yeah. Well, so so imagine these meat waves. You got wave after wave of these troops, these ground
Mhm.
troops, and so after a while, and many hours of fighting, the Ukrainians are running out of bullets.
Yeah,
They're just running out of
yeah.
fire.
I've played like zombie apocalypse video
Okay,
games. I know
okay.
exactly what.
So
going
so there's a handful. Let's say like there's 500 troops attack. They kill 300 of them or something. There's
Mhm.
like 200 left, and they get to where the trenches are, where the Ukrainian troops
Yeah.
are holding out, and now they run out of bullets. They're in their trench, and the fresh Russians, because they're doing wave after
Yeah.
wave. So these guys show up and they clear out the trenches. These troops have been fighting for like
Mhm.
a 24 hours, and it's difficult. So what Ukraine is saying is, look at, not only, so this is their situation, is not only do we just can't go status quo. We just can't go
Mhm.
item for item to match what Russia's doing.
Yeah.
We have to find a superior way to fight them, because we don't have the manpower.
They need technology.
So we need technology,
Drones.
right? And they need all kinds of other creative ways so that they're not putting too many of their troops and their population at risk. So,
Mhm.
all right. So we got a caller. Alrighty. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead.
It was
Hey,
me
you're back.
again.
Okay.
They got the money. Mike Johnson, the new speaker, took
Yes.
the money that
Uh-huh.
was promised to hire IRS agents.
Good.
So it was already authorized, and he said, no, less agents. We need it for.
We'll
Israel."
repurpose that money. Yeah. Okay,
There you
good.
go. And I like him and just separate bills as opposed to just loading stuff up.
Right.
Remember they call it the
Poison.
omnibus bill?
Yeah,
Big.
yeah, omnibus.
Now
Yeah, yeah.
the Mike Johnson has a new term, call it the mini omnibus,
Okay.
whatever that is. Yeah. So I like
Outstanding.
him as speaker. He
Yeah,
sounds like he's going to be a good man.
I think
All
so.
right.
Thanks.
Let you go.
All right. Thanks for
All
the
right.
information. All right. Appreciate it.
All right.
So anyway, basically, the concern is, if it's a war of attrition, Ukraine is going to come on the short side of that. So what they need is,
I think the
Air-
future might be on their side. The present isn't. At the present moment, I even
Right.
when the attack happened, I predicted probably Russia would win.
right,
Ukraine would hold up a fight for a little bit, but Russia would win.
right,
But because of all this new technology coming out with AI, it's going to completely revolutionize the way we fight war.
right.
So I think maybe it could be very different. The future might be on Ukraine's side. Like they're coming up with stuff. Like I've already seen robots that can pick up stuff, run, do like the full on. They can do all sorts of aerobic exercises.
Mhm.
They have joints everywhere. They can do all sorts of stuff. If that is given to Ukraine and they just have a bunch of robots running around killing waves and waves and waves and waves and waves, I think Ukraine might win, especially with drones too.
Yeah.
But then Russia will probably have the same thing.
Well, that's it. So,
Yeah.
so what they need is to have a leap in the technological advantage now.
You think there's going to be another arms race? It probably already is.
Oh yeah. Well, so
Technological arms
what
race.
we've been doing is we've been giving them some
Mhm.
of our older munitions that was slated for being decommissioned anyways.
Mhm.
So rather than decommissioning these warheads,
gave
these,
it to
right,
Uk-
and so we allowed the Ukrainians to decommission the equipment for us.
Mhm.
Plus, we learned a little bit about the equipment that the Russians using,
Mhm.
especially their anti-missile, their S-300, S-400, their anti-aircraft missile batteries that they use to shoot down vehicles and incoming rockets and things of that sort. And so we've learned an awful lot about our equipment versus their equipment because everything was kind of theoretical,
Mhm.
you know. We kind of had a notion of what we needed and what would work and why we needed it, but we didn't really have any in the field applications like we're seeing right now.
Mhm.
So that part is pretty interesting. So to say that, they're using up all our munitions, well, so what we're doing, we're putting in buy orders for all fresh munitions and equipment that would be in our inventory,
Mhm.
and what we're taking, things that we're taking out of our inventory are stuff that was slated to be decommissioned anyways. Not all of it, but some of it.
Mhm.
And so the news came out today about the airplanes that we offered, the F-16.
Mhm.
So the pilots have to go through a rigorous training. It's not like jumping into a car and going. You have to go through a very elaborate training system, and so it was just announced, I believe, today that the training could last as long as 9 months to get these F-16
Mhm.
Ukrainian pilots fully up to um, standard for utilizing the aircraft. And they need to use those aircraft. The problem is Ukrainians need to use that aircraft today, not tomorrow.
Mhm.
And so that's the
Yeah.
so it's the problem. And so in the meantime, we're still trying to send them stuff. Israel is, our only democratic partner in that region of the world. And certainly, we've been giving them lots of aid and financial support
Mhm.
and over the many decades, and with good reason. And Israel's done a very good job with it on their own, and they can continue, but they sometimes could use a little bit of help. So
Yeah, I feel like though that Israel could, they definitely stand a chance against Hamas.
yes, they have no problem. They
Yeah.
could they could be much more aggressive than what they're doing now. They're trying to be very
Yeah.
surgical in their approach, but it's
Mhm.
very difficult when you got a very narrow piece of real estate with just an incredible dense it's densely populated.
Yeah.
Nothing good is going to happen. They said from the very beginning, like the second day of when this war started, said it's going to be messy, which means there's just a lot of people going to die.
Yeah.
And they understood that. They didn't like it. That's why they took their time going in. Did what they call shaping. So they tried to get some of the um, the targets that that they know they can go after without hurting too many people. Now they're starting to get a little.
How many is too many?
Well,
I think one is too many.
One is too many.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they're trying to minimize the losses. So,
Yeah.
anyways, alrighty, we're gonna take a little pause for the cause. We'll be right back after a couple minutes. So stick with us. All right. There you go. So that's the theme song from the TV show Friends.
Because Matthew Perry has
Mhm.
recently passed away
Yeah.
in a jacuzzi. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways, but he was very, well respected actor.
Yeah.
And so, sorry for his loss, and worry, think about his family and
Chandler
and
was
his
my-
friends.
Chandler is my second favorite Friends character.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
That was the name of his character was Chandler.
Yeah.
Oh.
Chandler Bing. I've only watched like 3 episodes, but I know everyone's name for
Okay,
some reason. That's
so
how big the show was.
Who was your favorite character?
Probably Joey.
Joey.
Yeah.
He was a little ditzy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joey was my favorite.
Yeah.
I like Chandler's sarcasm.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough.
You know, it was crazy.
What's that?
Couple hundred years ago, there was a guy named Commodore Matthew Perry.
Yes.
Yeah, he was in like
Commodore
the U.S.
Perry.
Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe we could talk about this. We talk about Japan.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go.
So long time ago,
Yes.
in a world that's not really far away, but kind of because it's like in the Pacific. But anyway,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
A little Star
So-
Wars reference.
kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so Japan used to be feudal. They
Yes.
used feudalism,
Just
just like
feudal
medieval
words.
Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was just like a bunch of little kind of like feudal places,
Mhm.
and there would be like a lord, which would be like a daimyo, and then everyone's under the shogun,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a bigger samurai,
Yeah.
like one big samurai king dude.
Mm.
And then
Dude. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and then it would be like the samurai would be like the knights, and then there were peasants, and that was of course the majority of the population. But so Japan was very keen on being isolated from the rest of the world,
Right.
but they had some goodies, and so America's like, yo, we want them goodies to trade. So Commodore Perry just came with a bunch of warships,
Yeah.
and pointed their guns at Japan. They're like, hey, you want to trade? It's like, knock knock, who's there? And the Japanese, they got the message, so they're like, okay, we have no choice but to open our borders. So it was pretty much a threat.
Hmm.
And so they opened their borders, and they started to trade and stuff. The reason why they were so scared is because of what happened to China because of Western influence. Because China was completely divided in spheres of influence. Every single like European country and America, they would have their own little part of China they would control completely economically, and they would just drain the resources. And China was like absolutely sick and tired of just it was just demeaned in every single way.
Mm.
It wasn't really one China anymore. It was just taken advantage of from a bunch of other people, and Japan was afraid that that would happen to them too. So they decided to forget about feudalism, let's ditch that and become a Western power ourselves, which is really interesting because there wasn't really another country that really did that. I think one country that kind of went close in regards to independent, like replicating what a Western state did was the Haitian Revolution. When Haiti they created a constitution very similar to that of America and France. That was the only time, I think, where a white guy country decided to do something white guy countries do. But Japan wanted to go full on, let's become white people. And so what they did is there was this whole Meiji restoration type of thing. It was like this little Emperor Meiji guy. And there was a little civil war first because there were people who supported the shogun, and then there was people who supported this emperor. And so that happened. The emperor people won. And so the shogunate was done. And the Meiji restoration, basically, they created a whole democracy. They created a whole constitution. They created a Congress, which they called the Diet. I don't know why. It's just, I think it means something in their language.
Right.
I don't really know.
Okay.
But they call it Diet. And then they took some lands and stuff, rights away from the lords because there wasn't really, there were aristocrats. They got like their own little house. It was like a Senate and a House of Representatives. So the Senate was like the House of Lords in England. So those are where the daimyo went. And then there were elected representatives. However, a lot of them were military people. And the reason why they were military people is because though separation of powers, it's a great idea. If you're evil and you want power for yourself, it's not that great the more separated it is. So the emperor, like the president, has a lot of control over the military.
Right. Okay.
Like the president. I think the emperor in Meiji Japan had way more power than over the military than the president here. Way more, but like complete direct control of the military. That was his one thing that he
Right.
could have without checks and balances. So he's like, why don't I just have all my military generals run for office?
Ah.
Yeah. So they all ran for office and won. So there was a bunch of people in the Diet who were with the military anyway. So pretty much, was it really a democracy? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. But they got completely westernized. They wore top hats, cravats. This is like the late 1800s.
Hmm.
And then later on, bow ties. And even their art started looking like European art. If you actually look at pictures, it's really weird. Like they're literally they're copycats.
Yeah.
They're absolutely trying to be white people. And then eventually after like 10, 20 years, they decided to really synchronize Japanese culture and white people culture together. And so along with using a more Western form of education, at the same time, they still use the discipline of the samurai as well.
Ah.
So they did both. And it was actually pretty cool. They actually became an imperial power. They became very powerful.
Right.
And it started, they had a war with Russia and
Yeah.
stuff because and Russia lost. And so Japan like kind of established itself as a global power. It even had a alliance with England, which was huge because it was
Mm.
never really a third world or what was considered a third world nation or a non-white person nation to ever be regarded as going to the cool kids table. So Japan was there at the cool kids table.
Yeah.
But they started getting they were having, because their economy was so big and Japan was so small, they were having a population boom, they were having economic boom, they were having like a lot of like their military is getting bigger, they needed resources, they needed more land. So they're like, let's be an imperial power. So they started taking over stuff in Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia. It was a huge thing. They started with Manchuria. It all started with like the Mukden incident, where there was this railway in Manchuria, and so a bunch of like Japanese people, they put bombs there and then exploded it, and then they blamed it on the Manchus. They're like, "Oh, you did this against us for whatever." They made that as an excuse, and then they just like took it over.
False flag. It's
Yeah.
called a false flag. Yeah.
And actually, what was really cool is when Russia
Yeah.
and Japan, the Russo-Japanese War, was resolved in America kind of diplomatically
Mm.
because Theodore Roosevelt had this Portsmouth Treaty idea.
Yeah.
And so they all met and then they all sat down and they talked it out, hugged it out, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, but for
I
some
think
reason,
there's still some islands, some real
Mhm.
estate still being contested between Russia and Japan to this day.
oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know like the World War II, remember the War Guilt Clause? I think in the Treaty of Versailles that was placed on Germany where they had to pay for reparations.
Right.
That wasn't actually fully repaid till 2010 or something like that.
That's right.
That's
yeah.
insane.
2009, I think.
That's
yeah.
a long
Mhm.
time.
Well, it was a lot of money,
Yeah. That's crazy.
and they still needed to rebuild their economy. We helped them rebuild their whole country, really, because, well, American bombing pretty much destroyed a lot of their whole industrial infrastructure, so they had to rebuild it. So,
Mhm. Yeah. So
In-
as
interesting
Japan-
aside. So when we
Mhm.
bombed Germany, there was an American possession. General Motors owned a plant there, and before the war, it was they made cars. It was called Opel, and it was a division of Buick. And so the German government took it over and used the plant for making war material. And by the time we got to bomb that part of Germany, it was pretty obvious that Germany was going to lose the war. So they deliberately did not bomb the General Motors plant,
Mhm.
knowing that
Yeah.
General Motors would want it to use it. one day.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I thought that's kind of an
Mhm.
interesting little historical aside, but just you know, it's interesting. Some of the decisions are made during war. You
Mhm.
don't know what the people are making those decisions, what they know,
Mhm.
and then they make the direction to the people to affect those movements on the
Mhm.
ground. So I just found that interesting.
Yeah, that is another like really fun little fact about when cars were invented back in the day, and they were letting people, civilians, drive them for a test run.
Mhm.
Every time like they would want to brake, the car was going too fast, they would literally just say "whoa" like it was a
Whoa,
horse. Yeah,
whoa, whoa, Nelly!
yeah, they would literally talk to the car like a horse, and they're like, "No, you're supposed to like use the brakes."
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to step on this pedal. I
yeah.
love it. All right, we'll be right back. This is our last break, so stick with us. We'll be right back.
And the sign said, long-haired freaky people need not apply. So I tucked my hair up under my hat and I went in to ask him why. He said, you look like a fine, upstanding young man. I think you do. So I took off my hat and said, imagine that. Me working for you.
All right. 5-man electrical band. I think it was 1971.
No
52
idea.
years ago. Very cool.
I don't know this group.
I remember that song when it
Mhm.
came out. So
That's cool.
that's the year I graduated, 71.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're not that old.
No.
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 It's just
You're
the
not that old.
it's just the number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1971 wasn't that long ago.
That's right.
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, no.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Very true. So you were talking before we went to break about Japan, and I interrupted you with a World War II.
Oh, that's completely fine. I was going to World War II anyway.
Oh.
I mean, there's got to be some reason why Japan bombed Pearl Harbor.
Well, they had it in
Yeah.
because the United States was restricting the amount of oil.
Exactly. They put sanctions because Japan was taking over territories that they had. They wanted their economic influence.
Right. They were
And-
trying to create too much of
Exactly.
it.
So then they did sanctions, and then Japan was like, "Oh no, we need that oil because
Right.
our military is expanding. We just got all this new land, and we can't do do anything with it without the oil.
Right.
So then, the thing is, America, they stationed and they moved the Navy from where it was initially to Pearl Harbor. As I don't know, it wasn't intended as a threat. It was just there, I think, just
To be
keep
close
tabs
to
and
that
just-
region. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Japanese, because they spent too much time in the cool kids table, they let that run over their heads. And so they're like, oh, this is a threat. But you know what? We can take them. We took Russia. We can take the United States. And they bombed Pearl Harbor.
That's right.
Because they thought that, if they got rid of the Navy, they would have been fine. They thought that was the entire Navy, apparently.
Hmm. Or they didn't think it
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, they didn't think of it.
Yeah. So, but anyways, that was
Yeah.
then. This is now. So
Yeah.
they,
And Japan is thriving now.
yes, they
Anyway.
are.
They always, I don't know, they're really good at just building a lot from nothing. And,
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
definitely the best country for that.
Yep.
They did it twice, maybe even more times. I just don't know. But yeah. So we were
Yes.
talking about how if Trump gets convicted, but he becomes president, would he be able to pardon himself? I was reading stuff, and it depends.
It depends.
If it's a state crime, he can't.
right.
Okay.
Hmm. That's
But-
why the state of
Mm-hmm.
New York is suing
Yeah.
him and the
Exactly.
state of Georgia is suing him. That's the reason why they're doing these state crimes,
Yeah.
because,
They want to make sure he can't pardon himself.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he has to win those cases.
Mm-hmm. But then,
Yeah.
like everything else, he can pardon himself.
Yep. Federal crimes.
Yeah, or like the E. Jean Carroll thing. Boom, he can pardon himself for that. If that was actually a thing that happened.
Right.
We don't know. We don't know too much
No.
about that.
No.
There's no solid evidence for that.
So
Period.
yeah, and that the conversation came up because Eric Trump was in New York testifying, I guess, on his father's behalf. He was called in as a witness. The prosecution wanted to talk to him about his relationship, the business relationship in the family. And according to CNN, the former president's son grew visibly agitated. Well, no fooling. When pressed about his understanding of his father's financial statements. So, generally, when you handle the kind of incredible network of businesses that the Trump family owns and manages, you have financial people that take care of that.
Yeah.
So to assert that your children
We'll know
have a
everything.
deep understanding
Yeah.
about how your business works.
No.
I think that's an idiotic assumption. And
Who called these witnesses? The prosecution?
yes,
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
of course, it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oy. So, yeah.
Who else has the prosecution called?
Well, I haven't followed it that closely.
I don't think they might not have made headlines if they just called a random person. It's just because it's Trump's kids. That's why
Yeah.
it's
Well,
everywhere.
that's
Yeah.
because yeah.
Who has a defense called?
Well,
Trump, obviously, but who else?
he's been there. Yeah. Well, I don't know if he's actually. So the real story, or the story around the story, is that he keeps getting fined by the judge because he
Mhm.
has a gag order. He's not supposed to talk about the trial. So he's
But why can't he talk about his
well,
own
he said
trial?
that's what he says.
I mean, can anyone else? If I was, if I got a
You-
Grand Theft Auto,
right.
I could go home and talk about it, go to school and like, yo, I got a GTA and tell everyone. I don't
Hmm.
know why, just because he's a celeb, it can't happen.
So yeah, so he's not saying flattering things about the judge. And
He has a right to say whatever he wants to say.
correct. And but the judge doesn't want to hear it. So the judge,
Oh, the judge's feelings are hurt.
right?
So therefore, it's illegal. Let me fine you.
Yes,
Oh my God.
it's called a gag order. So he's not allowed to exercise his right of free speech.
So a gag order is an actual thing.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
yeah. But shouldn't we only limit it because of the time, place, and manner doctrine? Like doesn't speech have to actually put someone else in danger in order for
Hmm.
a gag order or for it to actually be restricted by the government? I mean, that's what the Constitution says.
We would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And him
Well,
talking trash about someone isn't exactly putting anyone in danger.
Correct. and that's President Trump's assumption too,
Yeah.
and assertion.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so that's very, very
I think Trump should sue the judge for finding him and go on another case.
well,
trial.
yeah.
Now-
So it'll be interesting. So what
Uh-huh.
he absolutely needs to win the case.
Mhm.
So yeah, it'll be yeah.
This is a wild case.
It's very wild. It's very wild. It's very questionable. Even the Georgia case are very, there's so many things that are going on with those two cases that are fascinating and I'm not a legal scholar, but it's just nobody else would have been prosecuted in these two cases that are being brought forward
Yeah.
against him.
So many people have done worse or
Mhm.
done things like this before, and no one's ever batted an eye.
Right. And so it's really an overreach of government.
It's a grudge.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's wild stuff. It's the
Mhm.
Wild West.
So many people in power can have so many temper tantrums at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Who knows? The FBI raided the home in New York City. Eric Adams, the chief fundraiser source, says that's huge. Now, don't you think that's kind of interesting? Now,
That-
Eric Adams, you
Who's
know, is
Eric
the
Adams?
Democratic mayor of New York
Okay.
City.
hmm
Okay. And up until recently, he's been very supportive of the Biden administration, but
Okay.
Biden administration has been dumping all these migrants at his doorstep. And
What, like full on immigrants in his doorstep?
well, yeah, in the city.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. So, and he says, okay, enough already. They've been putting them up in hotels. Now they're issuing tents. To these
Tents
people.
in
Yeah.
the city.
Yeah.
Oh, in Central Park,
Well, I guess so.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So, it's
like
just,
Hooverville.
it's a mess.
Okay.
So it's, yeah. So,
Why are they
so the
putting them
thing
in
is,
tents?
he's been complaining
hmm
to the Biden administration, you can't do this.
Yeah.
You're killing us here in New York.
Yeah.
So the Biden administration is okay. We'll fix your butt. And so you can't use government to do these things, but apparently the Biden administration gets to do things. This is third world country stuff. So
yeah, it sounds like third world country.
yeah. So we got to go, but
That's
thanks for
crazy.
listening. We'll be back here again next week, right here on Treasure Coast Forum. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.